Hey, this is Jen, and welcome to the Dropping Keys podcast. This is a space for honest stories, nervous system wisdom, and body based practices that help women stop pushing, performing, and proving their way through life, and to start creating change from the inside out. I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello, ladies. Welcome back. Dropping Keys, episode 3. So glad to be back here. Just came back from a week in Florida, family vacation. I'm happy to say that we didn't just survive, but we thrived. You know how family can be, right? Like, talk about the biggest activators for patterns. It's your family. There are 7 of us, but it was fantastic. So happy to be back here and so excited to be back and do another episode of Dropping Keys. It's hilarious to me how much resistance I had to doing this. And then now I've started. I am so excited to keep going. This is like my favorite thing to do right now. So here we are, episode 3. And this episode is going to kind of circle around how my understanding of freedom has completely changed. So for most of my life, freedom meant external freedom, right? Financial freedom, freedom of choice, independence, the ability to do what I wanted, how I wanted, and without many restrictions. I would say that'd be a good definition of freedom from the past for me. It meant being able to move about the cabin of life, with little external constraint. And I still value all of those things, don't get me wrong. But what I did eventually learn was that external freedom is not the whole picture. It's actually not even the deepest thing. It's actually not even what we truly want in life, or what truly motivates us, let's put it that way. Because you can have all the options in the world and still be running by fear. And you can have success and still totally be trapped in old patterns. You can have money, you can have achievement, and you can have a life that looks free from the outside, but internally you are still operating from survival. Yep, that was my story. So I'm speaking to you from coming from the inside of the house. The deeper freedom is actually the ability to know yourself and feel what you feel within yourself and tell the truth and live from something deeper and more expansive than just your conditioning. Now, freedom's not just doing whatever you want, it's actually having enough awareness and presence and internal safety to know what is actually moving you in your life. So, when I was kind of letting this topic, episode 3, the topic that wanted to be talked about, come up through me when I was thinking about it on vacation, I kind of thought it was going to be about nervous system patterns and how we don't really have a choice in life until we become aware of what's running us. And listen, girl, that is totally still part of it. It's kind of the centerpiece of what I teach, right? But the more I sat with the word freedom, the more I realized that this episode is also about one of the parts of my story that I have talked about the least, and that is my spiritual awakening. I want to say, not because I'm ashamed of it, and I also want to say, not because it was not one of the most life-altering things I've ever experienced, but really, truly, it's incredibly hard to put into words something that changed my entire sense of reality. And so, yeah, part of me has definitely been afraid of being judged or misunderstood. But the bigger truth is that how do I just casually explain that my understanding of life and love and God and the body and humanity and grief and reality itself started coming apart at the seams? How do I explain that? without sounding hella intense or like I haven't lost my mind, because you kind of do lose your mind. But so this episode is not me like trying to explain every detail of that experience rather, because nobody wants to ride that ride, me included. But I am going to talk about what changed and how eventually that experience led me back into the body. So, before all of this spiritual awakening stuff, again, freedom meant being financially free. It meant that I was able to make my own choices, do what I wanted, move through life how I wanted, and have the experiences that I wanted to have. It meant like not being trapped by external restrictions. And it meant support and possibility and movement and independence. And it was not a bad definition per se, but it was just incomplete. Because at that point, I didn't understand how much of my life was still being run by unconscious patterns. I did not understand how much of what I called choice, what I thought was choice in my life, was actually just conditioning and protection and trauma adaptation and nervous system patterning. I thought freedom was mostly about having fewer restrictions like around me in life, right? But I did not understand that actually the deepest restrictions were inside of me. So in 2015, I began mindfulness meditation for stress relief. Like science was coming in at the time about the potency of it as stress relief. I was maxed out for sure in terms of stress, and I'm a big science girl. So as all these people were talking about science, I was like, all right, they've convinced me. I will try this kooky shit called meditation. It was like nothing fancy, dude. I downloaded an app and I was doing 10 minutes a day. I was not trying to become a spiritual person at all. I was trying to calm the hell down. I was, uh, I was trying to make it through life. That's all, and raise kids and run businesses is why I was doing my 10 minutes a day meditation. Um, it was hard. It was hard. I want to put that out there. It was hard to, the whole meditation was me sitting and breathing in and out and counting my breaths in one, out two, in three, out four. Sometimes I teach this or use this in workshops and I call it the count to 10. And in it, you begin to notice for the first time, for me, the first time ever in my life, that I was not the voice in my head. And how difficult it was to just focus on counting my breaths without the voice that does run in my head going crazy. But a few weeks in, I was only doing it like, I did it every day, and I was only doing it like 3 or 4 weeks at the time, maybe. But I remember this very specific moment in the middle of the afternoon where my thoughts actually like stopped for a few seconds. My rhythm of my day during the weekdays would had taught a class in the early afternoon, and then I would leave my gym and I would go run like, life errands and stuff before I picked my kids up for school. And so I would leave my business and my mind would be going, right? It'd be sorting through all the things that I had to do and what was coming or what happened or whatever. And I pulled about a block away from my gym and I stopped at the stop sign. And just for like, I don't know, girls, 4 glorious seconds, everything was quiet. And I remember just pausing there for a second, like, whoa. And I'd had a couple little experiences like that with my little meditation, but like I was in waking reality. And I was like, whoa. And then, boop, the thoughts, the circus started back up again. But man, the whoa was because, like, in that moment, that's when I realized I was actually not the thoughts in my head. That was not me because I could observe the silence that just happened. And that was one of the very first, like, cracks into my reality. It might sound simple, but it changed something because if I could notice my thoughts, then I was actually not my thoughts. There was something in me that could observe them. And that was, if I had to put a pin on the map, that was probably the beginning of a much bigger unraveling. So a few years later, so meditating, but 2017, 2018, I started meditating longer and longer because I started feeling good and better and better, and I really started loving it. And it just naturally progressed to longer and deeper meditations. And that's when the experiences kind of became more transcendent, is the best word I can use for them. I just began having these feelings of like awe and expansion and beauty and love that were, I can't even say hard to describe. I'll say impossible to describe. There was no words that could touch what I was starting to notice in these meditative sits. And I also started receiving like messages and directions and visions and information. And while it was stunning and like super fucking magical, it was also completely disorienting. Like, I gotta pause here for a second. And I guess maybe I should have said this before. But going into this, I was not a spiritual person. I was what you'd call an agnostic. I had been loosely raised Christian. I lost my faith in a protective God and a loving God when I was 16 due to the experiences I was having in an abusive household. I gave up. I prayed to God. It seemed like God wasn't helping me out. I was in a lot of pain, and I thought, okay, what I've been taught about God can't be true because I don't know why a God would let me go through this, a child go through this level of pain. So I was interested in different religions. I thought if I just studied different religions, I would find a religion that fit. And so in my late teens, early 20s, I read up on Buddhism and Taoism and Judaism and all these things. And it didn't plug in anywhere. I found a lot of helpful tools, very interesting things, common threads, like, hey, everybody, all the common threads of religion is that there's an all-loving God presence. Anyways, I digress. Religions are not that different. But it was just like, it was just something I set up on the shelf. I had no spiritual basis whatsoever. Zero. When I started meditating, again, it was for stress relief. It was zero interest in spiritual realms, anything. I had no context for anything that began to happen whatsoever. Okay, back to the story. So I started having these messages and visions and these feelings and experiences of love and awe and expansion. And there were times when I was in these meditations where I didn't feel like I was like even in my body. Like I was wearing one of those aura rings, that tracked heart rate and sleep and breathing, right? And I remember at the time they had just put an update to the app where you could say, "Oh, I'm meditating right now," and turn that part on, and it would track your breathing and heart rate and stuff during meditation. And it would always it kept telling me that I was not breathing and I didn't have a heart rate during the deep parts of these meditations. And it was like, try not moving. You're doing something to basically mess up the aura ring being able to track you. Girls, I was not moving. But somehow I was having these experiences that felt like I was no longer in my physical body. And at those same moments, roughly, when I would look at the aura ring tracker, it would show I was not breathing, nor did I have a heart rate. Now, do I think I was breathing, had a heart rate? I probably did, but it was clearly so low and so subdued that the thing wasn't tracking it. So, like, shit like that was happening. Because it felt like I was somewhere else. I mean, there was this communication that was going on. There was expansion. And this is where my sensitivity really began to come back online. A sensitivity that I later figured out I've always had as a child, but I dampened it due to trauma. And but now it was starting to come back online in different ways, and there was a sense that began to grow that reality was far more layered than I had previously understood, but I had no framework for it, like none. So there was some definite moments where I thought I might be losing my mind. Like, am I going crazy? Because who in the hell does this shit happen to? Like, not me. Like, what? I was just having experiences that I just didn't know how to explain. Um, my perception of everything was changing, and my sensitivity to life and to things around me were changing. My relationship to everything began to change. And I remember this moment sitting at my dining room table and I'm like in tears. And my husband's like, "What's wrong?" And I was just like, "We're not supposed to be living this way." And he was like, "Us?" And I was like, "Everyone, the world, society, we're not supposed to be living this way." And I'm like, head in my hands. And I'm like crying. And he's like, "Is there anything I can do to help you?" And I was like, "No." And he walks away. And I remember I had my laptop open in front of me. And so I just like Googled some phrase that was in my mind at the time. And the first thing that came up in the search results were signs you are having a spiritual awakening. And I was like, what? Like, I think I had heard the phrase before, but barely. I thought spiritual awakenings were something that like happened to monks in monasteries, not to a married mother of two running a business, two businesses, and living a very, normal, full, very human life. But I clicked on that article and everything in it was me, is what had been happening to me. And just, I could just breathe for a few moments reading that. Like, whoa, what? Whoa, what? Like, this is documented. Other people go through this. Like, what? It was eerie what was being said in this article and what was happening to me. And so, yeah, there was some relief in that. But like, not total relief, because this was wildly destabilizing. But there was like at least a name for it. At least I was not the only person who had experienced something like this. Um, yeah. But as this began to transpire, my entire sense of reality was changed. I began seeing people differently. I could like see, for lack of a better word, like the soul, not the body, the humanness that we think is the person, but the actual soul that is informing the body, right? I could feel that there was a much grander element to life than what we perceive as 3D reality. And I became so much more sensitive to violence and the ways we are disconnected from each other and from ourselves and from the world around us, and the dysfunction in society, and the ways we are just not loving each other. And, these are things we can all talk about logically, right? Like, we all know humans are harming each other, and we know that we're harming the earth. Like, I knew the world was full of suffering. But this was different. This was not an intellectual understanding anymore that I could like shut off when I wanted to and redirect. No, it was like felt. It was like the separation between me and the world got very, very thin, and I could feel people's pain and their motivations and their protection, and also like who they are underneath all of it. Um, Yeah, my empathy and sensitivity was fully turned up. Um, I remember going out in public was tough at times. I couldn't, I had to pick and choose how I would go out into the world and interact for various. My sensitivity was just so high and so open that sometimes it would be overwhelming and I couldn't do it. And then sometimes, it'd be overwhelming in the most beautiful way. Like I would go to my daughter's track meets and sit in the stands with tears just pouring down my face because I loved everybody so much. And I could feel the beauty of all of us being from one source, living these individual lives and trying and striving and aching and loving and forgetting and remembering. I'm gonna have tears in my eyes. Right now, I have tears in my eyes because it was so beautiful. It is so beautiful. But it's also a lot, man. It's also a lot. And yeah, to take an honest moment here, it's one of the reasons I don't talk about it. Because it's tough to do without filling up and spilling out and crying. So yeah, one of the clearest things that awakening showed me was that love is not something we earn. It's not something we perform for. And it's not something we have to become acceptable enough to receive. Like God is love. We are love. And we are so loved. And we walk around emanating love when we are not armored against it. And that sounds simple and maybe even cliche, but when it comes to a lived experience, it's not cliche at all because it completely changes how you see and feel and interact with everything. Like you just begin to realize how much of human life is organized around trying to get love and prove love and withhold love and defend against love or become worthy of love. But underneath all of that, love's already there. Yeah, love's already there. And when I think about, what was beautiful about this, everything was beautiful about this. There is no language that really touches it. I began to experience a level of beauty that still, even now, just overflows the moment I just pause long enough to let it. It's what's making me cry right now. Is the fullness of beauty of being alive. Ladies, being alive is stunning. Like not in a cute quote on a mug way, but absolutely fucking stunning. Yeah, so see, very real moment. This is why I don't talk about this. Because it's beyond words. And my heart just explodes to talk about it. And that looks like me crying. And then people get weird. But pause to blow my nose. Okay, I'm back. I did more than blow my nose. I cried a little bit more. And then I giggled a bunch. uh, I don't talk about this. And I haven't talked about this much Yes, because it makes me cry. Yes, because I look like I begin to speak like a semi lunatic about how beautiful and amazing and stunning it is to be alive. In a way that people are all like, "Oh yeah, she might need some meds." um, but part of the freedom that is found for me in speaking about this and sharing this is that I want you to know me. And this is a huge part of who I am today. And so the freedom is in dropping keys, in showing up and doing this podcast for me and not hiding behind teaching, not being the coach, not being, not disconnected from the experiences and sharing them openly. I want you to know me. I want you to know who you're dealing with because I want to know you. So, anywho, okay, I'm back. Let's get back here. So, it was beautiful. It is beautiful. But listen, it was also completely destabilizing. Everything before this began to happen, everything I thought to be true about life, it was no longer solid. I had no idea what was happening to me. I felt incredibly lonely because I did not know who to talk to about it. And then when I looked for other people that were describing this type of experience, most of what I found did not match my life. um, Most of the voices I found speaking to things like spiritual awakening were men. And bless them, I love our men. But it is not the same as a woman's embodied experience. I think we can all agree on that. And the women I found were often not mothers. They were not actively raising a family, married, running businesses, and still living in the middle of a regular human life. Many were monks, teachers, older women, women who had devoted their lives to spirituality. And I kept thinking, okay, but like, what about those of us who are having our entire reality completely rearranged while also planning dinner, raising kids, navigating marriage, and running a couple businesses? Like, what are we supposed to do? We're just supposed to fucking play it cool? Like, what? I couldn't find anybody. And alongside the disorientation, there was grief. I had to grieve the life that I thought I was building. I had to grieve who I thought I was. I had to grieve the future I thought I was trying to create. Because in many ways, that version of me died. The version of me who felt sure that she knew what life was and what success was and that I knew what I was chasing, knew what I was trying to become. That version of me could not come all the way forward anymore. So even though this was all incredibly beautiful, it does not even sort of imply that it was easy. And at times, I definitely wished that I could go back. Um, I wish I could go. I wished, past tense. At the times, I wished I could just go back to not knowing. Like, I just wish I could just go back to not knowing any of this and just live my life. Because it was very, very difficult and very lonely and very challenging and very disorienting. Have I said that enough? I'm just saying. I can't say it enough. It was very hard. There was a moment on a family trip in Maui, dream vacation, by the way, that I'd always wanted to take, and we took. But there was a moment. My husband and I were sitting on this porch having one of those deep and hard conversations you have to have as a couple sometimes. And, he was just grieving how much I had changed, and rightly so. My awakening changed me so dramatically. And because it changed me, it changed our relationship. It changed the woman that he had previously been married to, the one that he had agreed to be married to. And I just remember, crying and saying something like, do you think I want this? Like, this is so hard. I wish God could put me back to before I knew. And then when we returned from Hawaii, I noticed that it was like the volume got turned down. Like my sensitivity and the connection didn't disappear, but it just became like less constantly available. Like before, when the awakening was full force, I was like the radio was always on, right? Always turned on, volume at 7 out of 10, right? And after that big, just emotional exclamation of "I wish I could go back," right? After that, we came back. It was like the radio was only tuned into certain situations. And for a little while, it felt like some relief, man. But then I would go to tune in to the stations that were magic. I was like, oh, yeah, I could just tune into this and get guidance. But then I realized, oh, this is just turned down. And I actually don't want this turned off. Because no matter how disruptive it had been to what I had considered reality, it was way too beautiful to not be in contact with. And so I declared I wanted it back in, and it all came back. It all came back. The radio was on. um, so, yeah, for the first few years, this awakening was very like head and heart based. Like my mind had opened, and my perception had opened, and my heart had opened. But my body was not fully on board yet. And it eventually became clear that, like, if I'm going to live like this, I have to come back into my body. Because without the body, awakening just is honestly just disorienting. Like, it can be beautiful and true, but impossible to integrate. Like, I could touch these expanded states in meditation and prayer and, like, 3 days in the mountains and just be exalted and living my best life. But I didn't know how to live from them in my regular life. And after a while, you start to desire to live an integrated life, right? And my body was the piece that had to make that complete. My nervous system had to come with me. So this is where somatics and embodiment and movement and nervous system work became the gig. Not as concepts, not as like another self-improvement project, but as the way that I learned how to live with what I had seen, felt, and known. Before that, I could access this truth like in pockets, and it was unwieldy. Like I couldn't really control it, and it would take me on rides that again just left me really disoriented and honestly kind of dysregulated in a lot of ways. Um, I couldn't live I couldn't live a life. I couldn't create in 3D reality until I came through the body. And then this truth actually became like livable. Um, and so one of the reasons I shared this story with you is it's one of the deepest roots of Rebody. Like, in order to integrate the awakening, I had to address my physical body, my nervous system, and the survival patterns that I was carrying and that I was operating from. And that process is how I came home to myself. And then I, began to realize, oh, this is not just about me, right? I mean, you don't get put through something like this to just keep it to yourself. Like, we all have the potential to live a cleaner and clearer version of truth and freedom in our lives, but not by bypassing our humanity and not by escaping the body and not by floating above some ordinary life in some spiritual cloud or, you know, blankets of inspiration and mindset work. It's We have the potential to live in it by coming back into our body, and patterning the body with enough safety and awareness and movement and breath and honesty and presence that we can actually live in our lives differently. The body is not separate from awakening. It can't possibly be, right? The body is where awakening becomes lived, and it's where true freedom becomes real. Um, this is why over functioning is not freedom. Doing more is not freedom. Having more external things in your life is not freedom. Finally getting the money or the body or the relationship or the success, the validation, those perfect externalized conditions that we all dream of, that is not the deepest freedom. Those things may matter and they definitely can support us. And I'm sure they are beautiful. No, they are beautiful and useful. And it's not bad to want them. But they cannot give us, they will never give us the kind of freedom that comes from within ourselves. Because freedom is not something that we arrive at once life in all of its details finally cooperate. Freedom is the capacity to be here in your body, in your life, with your truth, and with enough awareness to see the patterns that we've inherited and enough safety to actually feel what's real in those moments and enough presence to choose from something deeper and bigger than survival. So the key that I want to drop is this: the body is not separate from awakening or freedom. The body is where freedom is lived. And we are so much more than this 3D human life. And also in this beautifully expansive and ultimately humbling mystery, we are this human life. So maybe freedom is not escaping our humanity, but maybe freedom is just finally being able to fully inhabit it. Yeah. Well, there's a little breath for me. I hope you have a few breaths for yourself. Taking some breaths down into the belly, filling up. Boy, I really just can't miss a time to encourage people, women, to breathe. Uh, it was wonderful spending time with you. I'm starting to imagine someone, like a woman driving in her car while I'm recording, and it's like me and her having time. So it's me and you, boo. We're having time together. I love you so much. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being you, and just taking in whatever you could, whatever keys drop for you in this episode, whatever might feel alive for you after this episode. Pay attention and notice what might be up on the taps on the shoulder, what might be tapping you on the shoulder, asking you to be curious about it in your own life. Yeah. And we are starting the summer reset series in just about 2 weeks, meeting twice a month for June, July, and August of this summer. Tuesday or Thursday evenings, rather, sorry, where we move, we breathe, we explore, and we begin to recognize, notice, and love on these patterns of conditioning that are in our bodies, in our minds. And if you feel called to join us, I would love for you to be, it's a small group, 10 women only. More information can be found on the website. Website link is in the show notes, as well as a direct link for signing up for the reset. It's fun, it's exploratory. I love it, and especially the continued showing up together as a small group. We did it in April. I had great feedback. The women loved it. I loved it. Lots of awesome shifts, and lots of play. We play a lot and we laugh a lot, and that's one of the best parts. Okay, I will let you go. I love you so much, and I will see you next time.